and one such mentor is here today. I'd like to introduce to you Justin Lake, the head coach of the West Warwick Exeter-West Greenwich hockey team.
Good afternoon. My name is Justin Lake. I stand here before you today dressed as a West Warwick police officer. But recently, I've been more than just that. I speak to you as the head coach of the West Warwick Exeter-West Greenwich High School hockey team. The Webster Dictionary defines the word coach as one who instructs players in the fundamentals of sports and directs the team strategy. While that is what I agreed to when I took this position as the high school hockey coach, I quickly learned that it was much more than that. A high school coach is a teacher, a social worker, a psychologist, a mentor, a role model, and more importantly this year, a big brother. Since the integration of the West Warwick Exeter-West Greenwich co-op team in 2010, our team has lived by the motto, 3 towns, 2 schools, and 1 family, with Exeter, West Greenwich, and West Warwick all being combined. The players, past and present, have grown to become more than just players. They become brothers and sisters on and off the ice. On February 12th, 2022, around 9 p.m., our hockey family took the biggest center ice blindsided hit that we've ever had. Our captain, Matthew Dennison, and co-captain, Kevin McDonald, were struck head-on by an alleged drunk driver. When I was first notified of this accident by Kevin's father, I was sitting in the passenger side of my patrol vehicle, teaching a new patrol officer that we had just recently hired how to be the best he can be for this department. Told that officer to pull over to the side of the road and not move. Mr. McDonald told me all he knew was that Kevin and Matt were involved in a serious motor vehicle accident somewhere in Exeter, but he didn't know where. His voice sounded desperate, scared, and nervous. He was looking to me for help to navigate him through this horrible time. Those of you that know me or work with me, I usually have an answer for everything or something to say. Not knowing what to do or what to say, I told him to try and remain calm, and I'll call him right back. My phone wasn't hung up for more than 2 seconds. It rang again. This time it was Mr. Dennison. Mr. Dennison was also looking for answers. In this profession, it becomes natural to be able to find those answers and tell them. This one was different. I had done. He was one of my own that was hurt. I once again told him to start driving to the scene, the last known location he knew, and I'll get more answers for you. I quickly found out that it was a serious motor vehicle accident, and that the boys were trapped inside the vehicle, and they were in critical condition. And one Rhode Island State Trooper told me, Justin, I don't think they're going to make it. It was at that time I called Mr. Dennison back, and I said, go to the scene and see your boy. I still to this day don't know if that's the right answer, or that was the right advice. For what felt like hours, my mind was racing, praying for some good news. I finally was told Matthew was airlifted to the Rhode Island Hospital, and Matthew was transported by rescue. Kevin was transported by rescue to Hasbro. At the conclusion of my shift, I drove straight to the hospital to see both boys. My mind still racing. I arrived at the hospital and was able to eventually see Kevin. Very briefly. Saw that he was alive, he was breathing, and he was talking. And he actually made a joke under all the medication that he was on. I then returned to the Dennison family, where I stayed praying and crying alongside them throughout the whole night, navigating every little update that came in. It was around noon the following day that I realized that I needed to be a high school hockey coach. I realized that I needed to tell the 16 other hockey players that look up to me as a role model what had happened. I called all the players and the family members to the locker room, where I told them every detail I knew. They needed to know the truth. They needed to know what happened. This was the hardest speech that I've ever had to tell in those four walls of that locker room. I watched as all these young men's faces turned white as ghosts and began to cry. We continued practicing throughout the next 4 weeks. Well, we probably weren't supposed to be. But what was right was these kids needed to be together. They needed each other, and they needed to know every minute about what was going to happen to Kevin and Matt. These updates never got easier as Matthew's conditions never got better. Every day, I would see 1 or 2 players shed a tear and then laugh it off and keep skating. March 9th, I called practice early, and I asked them all to meet me in the field house, where I had mental health clinicians, support from the high school, waiting, along with their parents. And I told them that their captain was no longer going to make it, and that he has finished fighting his fight. Those of you that don't know Matthew, he was the hardest hitting hockey player on our team. He won every little battle that we asked him to. And over those 4 weeks, he fought, and he fought, and he fought. Matthew passed away for the following day, surrounded by his family. And it hit very hard for not only us, the hockey players that I coach, but this whole community. The Rhode Island DOT and Ms. Andriozzi speak much about the ripple effect of these events. Our ripple effect went much further than the Dennison family and our hockey family. This tragedy impacted almost everybody, young or old, throughout this community, the state, New England, and surprisingly, we've heard from people in other countries. Matthew will forever have an impact on this community and will help us move forward as a society. Our hockey players and other students from West Warwick have pledged to be a part of the much-needed change to keep our roads safe. We as a community, as adults, need to do better in holding each other accountable and responsible. Simply stopping someone before they're getting behind the wheel of a vehicle intoxicated, or simply telling the driver to put their phone down and that it can wait. We all have to be a part of this change. When you see something, say something. Our department, all the other departments in the state of Rhode Island, we're out there actively looking for impaired drivers and distracted drivers. But we cannot do this alone. We cannot be everywhere. We need the community's help. Call the police and report a potentially drunk driver or a distracted driver. Help us do our jobs in keeping these roads safe, and help us try to keep this from happening to any other family again. Thank you.